So I understand the getting caught up in the moment or it feeling good in the moment, or maybe it's alleviating something, but you're still going to have that problem at the end of the day, whether you deal with it now or whether you deal with it 10 years from now. It's just not going to miraculously go away because you're picking up a substance. It's just going to prolong the inevitable. It's better to just go through the hard part, get it over with, so that way you can move on and focus on your blooming. The longer you put it off too, the harder sometimes dealing with things will become. It's a lot easier, even if it's uncomfortable or doesn't feel like a good time, to do it now versus prolonging, which is going to end up happening in the end. My name is Alora, and in college I binge drank, and through college and beyond, I became addicted to nicotine. A little bit of a backstory. My brother was using vapes, and I have a bit of an oral fixation, so that is what first drew me to it. And it took quite a bit of time and several stopping and starting for me to become like addicted to nicotine. And even then, I will say I was on the lighter end. I had some slight withdrawing once I gave it up for good, but I was using it to help with some of my like GI problems and stuff like that, and it quickly went from a habit to me being addicted without even really knowing. I didn't at first know that I had a problem. I felt guilty, especially when my mom would be like, I never thought I'd have kids who would go out and vape and ruin their lungs. It didn't necessarily stop me from doing it, but it did make me feel a little bit guilty. I had stopped and started several times, so I didn't realize the last time was more of a problem until I put it down and noticed some of the withdrawal symptoms. But I also started getting worried because I would have some chest pain, and I was worried about like long-term effects. But I didn't in the time say, this is a problem. I said, I'm probably doing this too much. But it wasn't like, oh, I have a problem. I stopped and started, like I said, several different times because it was a habit, or me wanting to learn tricks on the vape, or I would come home from college and my brother would have vaped again, so I would pick it back up, just being in close proximity. Or when you're in college and partying, it intensifies your buzz. So I was like drunk. Alora was like, yeah, let's smoke a vape. But really the deciding factor for me was the cost of vaping. I understood the health risk and I took that into consideration as I was doing it, but really the cost of especially getting a machine, like a refillable vape and the juice, that costs a lot of money. And then if it dies on you, you have to replace the whole device and the coils. Or if you're doing disposable vapes, they're a lot more for only like 1,000 puffs. And I just couldn't rationalize with myself on why buying $30 for a Nick stick that was going to last maybe a week and a half was worth it. One of my biggest things was just the habit of having a vape in my hand. I always had one that was like this size, and it was always in my hand or right there in my little cup holder in between work. It was just a habit to have it, so I was reaching for it when it wasn't there. Or to this day, if someone's like vaping around me really heavily, my body's like, that's a good idea, we should do that. And then I have to kind of remind myself that no, it's not worth it. But you still have things that remind you. Another part was I was working in healthcare at the last time I was vaping, and it was a high stress environment. I was getting like stress hives, so I started using vaping as a coping mechanism versus properly handling my emotions. And a lot of the other nurses were doing it, so I had gone in and I had quit vaping, but then I picked it back up because everyone else was kind of doing it, and that was how they were handling their stress. And then I was like, well, I'll handle my stress this way too, when really I knew better, and probably shouldn't have made that decision. I feel like I always say I'm a boring 28-year-old because I go to work, I have 2 jobs. So if I'm not at my full-time job on the weekends, sometimes I can be at my PRN job. I spend a lot of time with family and friends. I read a ton, but I'm making strides to spending more time with people around me and really thinking about my future and where I want to go and how I want to get there. So yeah, but I feel like I'm a homebody, so I spend a lot of time at home. I'm usually at work or home, or with my family, and I work with in the same office as my mom, so sometimes it's all at once. But I've been focusing a lot on working and figuring out what I want to do in the next couple of years in my life and what that'll look like and how I plan to get there.